All right, how's it going, everybody? Thanks for joining tonight. I appreciate it. I think we're going to have a really good time. So I've got a really fun guest tonight. So this will be a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to having everybody kind of hear what my guest has to say and just kind of talk about really everything that's going on with their company and all of that. So it should be an awful lot of fun. So, all right, without further ado, let's see. Let me go ahead and we'll bring on tonight's guest, who is Murphy Quint. He's the head distiller for Cedar Ridge Distillery or Winery and Distillery. So let me bring him on, and we'll get going here. All right, let's see here. Murphy, how are you, sir?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
Not bad. Thanks for joining tonight. I'm super excited to have you on. After we'll get into it a little bit, but after I had a little taste, we were talking a little bit before the live stream. But what really kind of wanted me to talk to Murphy was once I kind of had a little sip of their QuintEssential, I knew I had to talk to the guy behind this one. So thanks for joining tonight. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Honored to be with you.
Yeah. So, okay. So what I try to do most of the time is, as the guest, just kind of tell everybody a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into the industry.
Yeah. So like you said, my name is Murphy Quint. I'm the head distiller and director of operations here at Cedar Ridge Winery and Distillery. So we're a winery and distillery out in Swisher, Iowa. And if you're familiar with the state of Iowa, Swisher is nestled right between Cedar Rapids and Iowa City, so the eastern side of the state. Anyway, yeah, I've been doing this for about 16 years now. I'm 32 now. I've been doing this since I was 16, and the way that I got into this industry at such a young age is that my parents actually started Cedar Ridge. So had a nice easy foot in the door into this crazy cool industry because my parents happened to start a winery and distillery. So. Early on, and I've said this many times, but admittedly, I was a young kid in high school and I was just helping out after school during the nights and on the weekends and really just trying to make a few extra bucks to hang out with friends. And so early on, my work in this industry was mainly cellar stuff, a lot of cleaning, a lot of labeling, and just general labor. But as time went on, especially I'd say when I was, 18, 19, during my college years, I really started to get interested in this stuff. I really developed a passion for it and a love for it, and eventually wanted to kind of branch out and learn as much as I could, and especially do it on my own. Like I said, I was working at a family business, and I always feel that you can become more of an independent person and kind of gain more knowledge if you just branch out on your own for a little while. And so I moved out to Colorado. I worked at a really cool food distribution company called Altamira Foods for a few years, and basically called Stranahan's Colorado whiskey, a couple times a month until they finally hired me. I basically annoyed them into giving me a job one day, and that was a pivotal moment in my career. I worked out at Stranahan's for a few years, met some really great people, and developed just an absolute passion for whiskey production. Prior to my time out there, I had obviously worked with whiskey, but also wine and vodka and gin and rum. And it was never really focused, but at Stranahan's, it was very, very focused on single malt production. And so that was a big moment in my career. I had the opportunity to work directly under a guy named Rob Dietrich, who was the head distiller, master distiller there, and is now over at Blackened. So he taught me more than my entire college experience. He taught me so much. So anyway, worked there for a few years. Then in 2014, my fiance at the time, wife now, we were ready to move back to the Midwest, closer to our families, and kind of start a family of our own. So that's when I got back involved at Cedar Ridge. I had a brief period where I worked in sales, distribution, and marketing, and then eventually worked my way back into production because that's where I belong. So, long story short, if you fast forward to right now, I'm back in the production world. I'm the head distiller and director of operations here. So there's a lot going on at Cedar Ridge. I oversee, obviously, our whiskey operation, but In addition to that, a number of other spirits. And then we have a really fantastic wine operation as well. While I do technically oversee it, I'm not by any means the winemaker. We've got a guy named Kent Falker who is extremely talented at what he does. He makes all of our wine, and as well as overseeing our vineyard. So yeah, we've got a lot going on, and we've got a really fantastic production team here at Cedar Ridge, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, awesome. And it is. I mean, like I said before, we were chatting a little bit before, and it's a fascinating process. And like we were saying before, you're really only as good as the team that you've got around you. So that's always, very, very important. So, I mean, just letting everybody else know that, he does a fantastic job, but the team he puts around him, helps to just, make that stuff even better. So, yeah. Let's talk about like Cedar Ridge specifically. So in terms of some of their products and kind of maybe just a day in the life for you there, what are kind of like some of what's your role within Cedar Ridge at this point?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm the head distiller and director of operations, and that there's a lot that falls under that title. So I mean, obviously, making sure that we're producing an adequate amount of whiskey. We measure by using a barrel count system. Basically, we need to produce X barrels per month. Right now, we're aiming for 150 barrels per month, but next year that's going to go up. So, I mean, I oversee that. I have a very, very talented team of brewers and distillers, and a very talented head brewer named John Rupp. So those guys, they do a tremendous job for us. I, oversee our bottling and packaging operations, which, that's not exactly a snooze fest. I mean, there's a lot going on there, especially right now, October, November, December in this industry. That's when about 75% of the sales are made. So, I mean, just crazy amounts of bottling and packaging. I have to make sure that we have all of our supplies for all that stuff. We make, let's see, 20, 30 different products here. And we, many of them have different bottles, different corks, different capsules. We got to make sure we've got all that on hand. So, I have to oversee that. And then, I mean, we're also on a 75-acre property out here. We have vineyards out here. All the land has to be mowed and maintained. I'm not by any means the vineyard manager. I'm not by any means the ground manager, but I do oversee all that. And as you mentioned earlier, I've got just an extremely talented team doing all that stuff. I'd be nothing without those guys. I always make the analogy, even the most talented chef can't put a good meal together if he doesn't have good raw ingredients, if he doesn't have a good team working in the kitchen. So, like I said, we do a ton here, but props to the guys who are actually out there doing it.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I couldn't agree with that statement, more. So, with everything that we've got going on now with all the COVID and stuff, I'm always interested to hear, from your side of things and business, how has all of that impacted you guys and kind of like the surrounding community?
Yeah, crazy. It's been a crazy impact. And it all happened so incredibly fast. No one really saw any of this coming. So, some of the more obvious things, we have much less foot traffic out here than normal. So most people wouldn't guess it because we're kind of in a small town in the middle of Iowa. But we actually have over 100,000 visitors every single year come through here. And we definitely won't hit that number this year because, I mean, for a while we were fully closed down. And even right now, I mean, we've got capacity restrictions. We can only allow about half of what we normally allow in here. We have a lot of weddings, and many of those were canceled or postponed. So, the foot traffic has definitely dropped down, and therefore selling our spirits on site at our distillery, that revenue stream has definitely decreased. But it's really just been a shift. A lot more people are drinking at home than they are out here at Cedar Ridge, or even, unfortunately, out at the bars and restaurants. So they're drinking at home, and they're just buying their alcohol differently. So where we're seeing a decrease, we're kind of counterbalancing that with increases elsewhere. Our distribution business is way up this year. And in addition to that, I've got to mention the hand sanitizer phase that almost every distiller went through this year. When a lot of the distilleries or at least the tasting rooms were being shut down, most distilleries pivoted over into the world of hand sanitizer production, which was a really great thing for the communities and the country in general. Luckily, we made that pivot into hand sanitizer production very, very quickly, really early on in that process. And we gave a lot of free hand sanitizer away to our community, but also we're able to land some really big purchase orders with, like postal services and hospitals and stuff like that. So we were able to actually get a decent amount of revenue coming in from hand sanitizer production. And that, while it's a really boring subject to talk about, it's got to be mentioned because that laid the groundwork for us to have a really successful year. In a year where, obviously the economy took a major hit in general, we haven't laid a single person off this year. And that's largely due to the fact that we just pivoted a lot of our workers over to hand sanitizer and sold enough to keep all the wheels turning.
Yeah. That's important. I mean, and that says a lot about, you guys as a company to be able to keep everybody on and not have to lay anybody off. I mean, in these times, there's a lot of people who, weren't fortunate enough to have that, happen to them. And, kudos to you guys for making that happen for, your employees. And then still at the same time, providing what you did for your community. So that's, hats off to you guys. So
yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So why don't we, I guess, talk a little bit about just in general, some of the whiskey processes, kind of some of the things you go through on a daily basis. And maybe, we can discuss a couple of the products that I've got here and kind of just what goes into, Cedar Ridge and you guys producing what it is that you produce.
Yeah. So like I said earlier, there's a lot going on that front because we make so many different things. The world of whiskey is where our focus is. I mean, while we definitely have really phenomenal wine here, we actually produce about 20,000 gallons of wine, and we have vodkas, gins, and rums. The majority of our time is being spent on whiskey, primarily the three that you have in front of you, along with our SlipKnot Reserve whiskey, which I'm sure we'll touch on at some point in this conversation. So those three whiskeys that you've got next to you, that is where the majority of our time and resources are being allocated to. And I'm sure we'll taste each of them and break down. And I'll provide some fun facts about each of them and the process behind it. But we've got what we call basically here, I guess we call it our three-headed monster. We're focusing on our Iowa bourbon, our QuintEssential single malt, and then our SlipKnot whiskeys. Those three products, that's where the majority of our resources are being allocated to.
Yeah, interesting. And it was, I mean, just looking through some of the portfolio of what you guys have. I mean, it's a lot going on between this and the wines and the vodka and all that. Yeah, you guys are definitely staying busy. That's for sure. So.
Yeah, and I should mention, I mean, one reason why we produce so many different things. I mean, we have 3 different brandies, we've got 2 different vodkas, we've got a gin. So we really produce almost everything under the sun, 2 different rums. The reason we do that is because in the state of Iowa, in order for a distillery to actually serve cocktails and stuff like that on site, which is a very new law, we just recently granted that permission. In order to do that, we have to produce anything that we want to pour. So if we want to have a full bar for our wedding business or for any guest that comes on site, we have to produce literally everything we pour. So like I said, we really focus on whiskey, but it's also important for our business model that we dabble in vodka and we dabble in gin and brandy so that we can have that full bar I'm talking about.
Yeah. And that's something that's kind of a little bit newer for us here too, in terms of being able to, serve the cocktails at like a distillery and all of that. So yeah, that's not something that's overly, long. That's, it's something new here too. So, Jason Lamp, thanks for the super chat. I appreciate that. You'll be entered into the tonight's giveaway. So that you guys, I think anybody who's not familiar with the Cedar Ridge lineup, I think really you guys are going to be, pretty darn impressed with what's going on. And again, we'll get into a little bit of the products, themselves, individually, but I think you guys will. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this, would just give some people, an opportunity to try, 2 or 3 different whiskeys that maybe you wouldn't normally have an opportunity to do. So, all right. So why don't we, do you want to talk maybe like about some of the whiskey specifically, and then we can kind of, once we get into the SlipKnot, we can talk a little bit about that. But yeah, I mean, would you consider this kind of just your flagship bourbon then?
Yes, that's exactly right. So we'll start with that. The Cedar Ridge, Iowa bourbon is without question our flagship product. It is our number one. And as a matter of fact, we haven't reached the point where we can officially confirm, but we're hoping that by the end of the year here, we'll be the number one selling bourbon in the state of Iowa. We're actually fairly confident that we will be. And that's really important to us, but it's also important to our business in general, because once you claim that number one spot, that can spill over into other states. No one can really take that claim away from you. So hopefully we finish the year strong, and we can achieve that, and we'll have, I'm sure we'll have a big press release and a party if that does end up happening. But anyway, getting to kind of the down and dirty details on it, the whole point behind it, and the reason for starting the Iowa bourbon is really was my dad that came up with it, and that's that Iowa is the corn state, and every year, we're importing millions of dollars of bourbon into Iowa from other states. When we've got the corn right here, we've got everything we need right here in order to produce great bourbon. So it seemed like a good fit, and that's what got it started. So we do use Iowa corn from our own family farm in Winthrop, Iowa, and the mash bill on it is 74% corn, 14% rye, 12% barley. Minimum 3-year age statement. And yeah, like I said, it's our number one. We just in the state of Iowa alone, we sell between 500 to 600 cases of it every month.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Boy, that's
and that's another thing on it that's always really important for me to mention, is that its success would be nowhere without Iowans supporting it. Iowans picked up on this one early on, and I don't mean to discount any of our fans elsewhere, because especially in the Midwest, we've got a lot of supporters that we very much appreciate. But early on, when no one had even heard of us yet, we were just this kind of mom and pop shop. Iowans really came out and supported us early on. And when we released that Iowa bourbon, they obviously rallied behind it, and it created a lot of positive momentum, and eventually led us to the point where we're at now. So I always have to give a nod to Iowans on that one, and that's why the word Iowa will always be on the label, because we wouldn't be anywhere without their support.
Yeah, and that's important. I think as a business, and specifically kind of like the whiskey business, taking care of your own, so to speak, is very, very important. It's just
Absolutely.
It's just one of those things where, I've witnessed it here in Wisconsin, where a company did not do that, and things ended up not going very well. And that was really the big impact, was the fact that they wanted to get outside of this state, before they took care of their own. And then, really when things don't go so well outside, and you try to come back to your own market, it's kind of, people have a little bit of a sour taste in their mouth.
It's a little too late at that point. And that's a very common mistake that almost every distillery, every craft distillery or newer distillery, whatever you want to call them, it's a mistake that we almost all make. And that's that we spread ourselves too thin too fast. Everyone gets very, very tempted by the bright lights in New York City and LA, and I'm going there and building a brand because it makes sense. Brands can be built very quickly there. If you see success in those major markets, it can just create an absolute boom for your business. But if everyone's competing there, it's going to be very difficult to do, especially when you're a smaller distillery with very limited resources. So, we definitely did a little bit of that as well. But you got to bring it back to your own state. You got to focus there. That's where your supporters are going to be. That's where you're going to have the most fans. And it's also going to be the most cost effective. Traveling down to Miami or LA or New York all the time, that's going to really limit how often you can be active in those markets. And, planning parties and stuff there, like even whiskey pairing dinners, it's so costly as opposed to just hitting the area, the 20 square miles surrounding you. So finding success in your own market absolutely has to be your focus starting out. And we've gotten to the point now where long term, even, we really want to focus on the Midwest. Will our product be available from coast to coast one day? Maybe. And even now, there are some states out there that carry it, but we're very focused on Iowa and the states directly surrounding us.
Okay, I was going to ask you, like, since we're talking about, specifically kind of Iowa or just in general, what is like the distribution? I know you just said basically kind of the Midwest for the most part.
Yeah. So it varies product by product. With the Cedar Ridge, Iowa bourbon, we call it our mayonnaise lid jar. There's Iowa, and then we took a circle lid and literally drew a circle around Iowa to focus on the states directly touching us for the Cedar Ridge, Iowa bourbon. Excuse me. The reason being there is that's where we're going to be most relevant. An Iowa bourbon that people haven't heard of yet in Louisiana isn't really going to make sense, but a connecting state, they'll be more likely to give it a chance because they're more likely to have traveled through the area. So that's that product. It's also available in Texas and a few other states.
Okay.
You get over to the SlipKnot whiskeys. Those are an exception. Those are going to be available everywhere, and we've exported this year to let's see, the Netherlands. We've exported to Australia, Japan. There's a few other countries in there as well. That product needs to be available wherever they're going to be touring. Wherever that band is going to travel to, SlipKnot, that product needs to be available. So that's kind of the exception. And then the QuintEssential. That is also a little different because of the price point. It's a more premium offering. Obviously, our focus is in the state of Iowa, but we also want that to be available anywhere where there's more of a Scotch following, where people are going to appreciate, obviously, single malts, but at a higher price point and really want to geek out about that product. It's not going to be, a mixer. It's not going to go into an old fashioned. It's going to be enjoyed neat. And so that one, we're really targeting specific consumers, and we're trying to make that available wherever they're at. So the distribution layout varies largely based on product to product. And then you get into some of our other stuff, and that's almost exclusively available in the state of Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, like our rums and our brandies. So
okay, interesting. Well, Travis, thanks for the super chat. Love some Cedar Ridge. Tell Murphy to hire him.
What's up, Travis? Good to hear from you, man. We're gonna get you out here one day. And
I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Travis is like from around there, or maybe lives in Iowa now. I think, but
yeah, absolutely. Travis, I believe, was out here during harvest. He helped us pick some grapes, and we shared a couple drams together. Real good guy.
Okay, good. Yeah, and Jason from the Mash and Drum, he says very impressed with Cedar Ridge, making great juice.
Man, you guys are too nice. Appreciate it.
I'll get everybody taken care of later. That's for sure. So, all right. So let me go back to this. So this was one of the things that was interesting to me. I mean, as a music fan and in general, SlipKnot. So I think I have an idea of at least how or why you got involved with them, but do you want to kind of go into just like a little bit of that relationship, and then maybe just talk about, how this whiskey was kind of developed, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, it was just kind of a crazy situation. They actually reached out to us. This would have been, it's all happened so quickly. This would have been last year. I think early 2019, mid 2019. Their manager had reached out to us and said, hey, I'm with the band SlipKnot, and we're interested in getting in the world of whiskey. And would you be interested in sitting down with us? And we actually, Jeff, my dad, who's the owner, the email went to him. And for one reason or another, he's like the only person on the planet who doesn't know who SlipKnot is. It still blows my mind to this day. And he, when he got that email, he almost just didn't respond to it, which would have been one of the biggest mistakes that our company had ever made. Luckily, he forwarded that message on to the rest of our management team, and we all quickly responded, yes, we definitely need to sit down with these guys. I mean, the SlipKnot is a big, big deal. Mm-hmm. So anyway, they came out, and we realized that this was going to work. They're an Iowan band. We're an Iowan distillery. They're making authentic music. We're making authentic whiskey. So it is a good match. And then from there, I mean, it really just took off. Clown, who is the head of the band, he came out and he has really run point on this product and this process. He came out and the two of us sat down together. We took barrel samples of both bourbon and rye at several different proofs, and we scattered them out across our conference room table. We tried all of them individually, and then we created several different blends, like I said, at different proofs and stuff. And he actually did end up coming up with the final blend in the final proof. He landed on a 60% bourbon, 40% rye blend of whiskey. So the number 9 whiskey that you see in front of you there, that is 60% bourbon, 40% rye to his recipe. And he landed on 90 proof for the bottle that you have in front of you, and then 99 for the reserve version of it. So obviously went all in on that number 9 there. 9's all around, but you know, just how involved he's been in the process has been really impressive to me. There are a lot of celebrity whiskeys out there these days, and I think it's easy for anyone with a following, a name, a brand, whatever, to just kind of license out their name, slap a label on something, and start collecting checks.
Yeah. And
SlipKnot was not interested in doing that. It was very important to Clown, especially that this whiskey was extremely good. That, you know, it was going to be appealing to both SlipKnot fans, but also whiskey consumers, whiskey connoisseurs. You know, he didn't want this to be something that he was just going to sell to his fans. He wanted it to be a respected product. So anyway, that's kind of how it happened and how we've gotten to where we're at now. But like I said, I have a lot of respect for Clown and being involved in the process, and just to the band in general, because I mean, SlipKnot could have worked with any distillery on this planet. They have a global following, and they chose to work with, you know, a distillery that's only been around 15 years. And they chose us because we're Iowans and they're Iowans. And it was just kind of a good match.
Well, and that's important. You know, like you said, I mean, he could have gone anywhere and put his name on any kind of spirit, you know, and that's pretty cool that he chose you guys to do this. So, and here's kind of a fun thing. So everybody who goes crazy over all the boo ryes, you got it in the number 9. You've got it right there. Basically, you've got a bourbon rye blend. So, and it does actually for 90 proof. Just sipping on a little bit of it now, it's got a really nice balance to it of that sweet and spice that's there. It's really, really nice. So
thank you. And on that, so yeah, that balance is something that we really look for. And while the recipe that Clown created is 60% bourbon, 40% rye, I mean, we will tinker with it slightly to get a balanced whiskey. I mean, if it ends up being closer to 70-30, then so be it. What we're after is a well-balanced, well-respected whiskey. You know, there's not necessarily any magic to sticking to 60-40. The magic's in making sure that the product is good. So I always say that Clown kind of wrote the recipe, and we're cooking to taste. You know, if it needs a little bit more salt and pepper, we'll do that. But we want a well-rounded, well-respected whiskey there.
Well, and it's nice that he's, you know, involved as much as he is to you know, that. I mean, you know, he could just put his name on it and not care, you know, but, you know, he's really kind of crafting his own bourbon for the most part, or his own whiskey.
Absolutely is. I mean, he's out here. I'd say he's out here once a month during like tour season stuff, maybe once every other month, but he's active out here. And he is one of the most interesting, creative people I've ever met in my life. Sitting around a conference room table with him is a really, really fun experience. It's inspiring because, I mean, he'll have an idea or a concept come up and he'll just run with it. I mean, he'll sorry, my dog just walked in there. He'll just run with the thought, and I mean, he'll kind of ramble on for like 5-10 minutes, and it's like, man, this guy's just spitting out really, really cool ideas right in front of us all. So he's just a really great guy and really innovative.
Yeah, that's good. Let me just kind of do a couple of shout outs. Run Rev Collins. Thanks, bud, for the super chat. You're entered into the giveaway. Same with Mike Meyer. Appreciate it. Run said before, love hearing about Cedar Ridge. All new to him. So that's good. I'm glad. This is why I like to try to do these things. Anytime I can get people introduced to other brands, I'm happy to do so. And Mike says, looking forward to trying some Cedar Ridge sometime. Well, he always I'm a Miami Dolphins fan, so Mike always makes a reference to their quarterback in Miami.
I'm familiar. I'm a football nerd as well, a fantasy football nerd, and
oh yeah, me too.
I have two on a couple of my teams. I'm hoping to get put in.
Yeah, don't even get me started on the fantasy football stuff. So I could talk about hours about that, but
we're gonna veer away from whiskey too much. Yeah, we got to stay focused here.
That's the thing. So, all right, let's see if there's anything else in the chat here real quick before we kind of get into the QuintEssential. Yeah, is there anything else? I guess I always like to have. I mean, if there's something I haven't asked or something that you just want to kind of chat about, I'm happy to do so as well. So
yeah, I mean, just quickly before we get into the QuintEssential, I've heard plenty of people since we've started talking. Plenty of people have written in and said that they want to get out here or try our product or whatever. One thing that I always try to hammer home is I know that Iowa isn't exactly a popular tourist destination, and I don't know why, because it's a beautiful state. But try to get out here and come out to Cedar Ridge and see what we're doing. It makes so much more sense once you get out here and actually see the place. You'll see what we're actually doing. From out of state, you see our products on the shelves and stuff like that. But once you actually get out here in person, you'll see our beautiful vineyards and our facilities and our property. And it definitely just makes more sense. I mean, we're an actual sizable winery and distillery out here. We're on what we call a campus. I mean, we've got 8 different barrel storage facilities. We've got a large production floor, 2 different event centers. I mean, it's fairly sizable. So get out here and check the place out if you're ever in the state.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, for anybody who's not used to the Midwest, I mean, there's an awful lot of really nice places to be. And this is always a nice time of year. I mean, the transition can go from being really nice to really not so nice quickly. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's the Midwest. I mean, I've lived here most of my life, and it's just a fantastic, area to live in. So, all right. So a couple other guys came in for the giveaway tonight. Joseph Brazo, thanks, buddy. Really appreciate it. So, yeah, giveaway with a question mark. So, and then, Richie Z, cheers, Scott Murphy. So and DJ, he and I did a blind Scotch flight last week on the live stream to kind of help get me a little more introduced to the Scotch world that wasn't so much really having to do with like peat and all that. So that was really an eye opener for me. And you and I were talking a little bit about that before, just kind of being introduced to Scotch and being introduced to the right kind of Scotch. That's key.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, okay. So, all right, let's see what else we have. I just want to make sure there weren't any questions in here at all. So, yeah, Travis says Cedar Ridge is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting down there. My wife and I think we're going to try to take a ride down there. That's not very far from me. I mean, we're just outside Milwaukee, so that's not a long drive for us at all. So,
yeah, you got to get out here. And when you do, we'll do a little VIP tour. We'll bust open some barrels and we'll make a day out of it. It'll be fun. And that goes for anyone listening too. I mean, give me a shout on Instagram. I'm Murphy.Quint. Shoot me a message and we'll arrange something. Come out here and we'll have a good time.
Let me ask you this. While we're kind of on that subject, what about do you guys get into doing any kind of like barrel picks with groups or anything along those lines? Do you do any of that stuff?
Oh yeah. We sell a lot of single barrels. And we, I mean, I guess, do you mean like specifically societies and guilds, or do you mean like the store? Yeah. So we do a little bit of both. Obviously, we sell a lot of single barrels to like retailers and bars and stuff, but we have recently started doing more with actual whiskey societies and guilds, mainly in the state of Iowa. One that really got that started for us, I got to give a shout out to them, is the Iowa Whiskey Chasers, which is a group of Iowa nerds or whiskey nerds like myself who just absolutely are passionate about this stuff. And so they come out, I'd say a few times a year, and they, we'll lay out a bunch of barrels for them to try through, and they'll end up selecting one. Recently, they kind of got away from just selecting a normal barrel and have gotten more into cask finishing. So we'll have, you know, as many as will come out from that group. We'll have them come out, try through a number of barrels, and then we'll say, hey, take this barrel and finish it in a port cask, or take this barrel and move it over to an ex apple brandy cask. So we're getting pretty out there with it together, and it's a ton of fun. But yeah, we're doing more and more work with some societies locally.
Yeah, and that's,
I got to mention Cedar Glen as well. The Cedar Glen Society is awesome. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that's kind of fun. So I mean, I always have kind of thought about, and I've talked to a couple other guys about this, but as kind of like the whiskey tube community, so to speak, you know, being able to you know, do picks and then be able to offer them to the public of maybe some things that are sometimes a little bit different or whatever it may be, I always thought was not only like important in order to get other brands out to other people who may not be exposed to them, but just in general. I mean, I just like the overall ability to expose a brand and just get it out to people and let them enjoy, you know, certain things. So I think what I'll probably do is maybe even talk to a couple of the other guys and see about exploring that, and maybe you and I can talk and figure something out. So
absolutely. I hope we do. We do.
All right. So here was the reason I originally reached out to Murphy was I did the review of the QuintEssential maybe a couple weeks or so ago now. And prior to this, I hadn't done a lot with American single malts, but I've always been interested in it. And for me, this was kind of where I would say a little bit, some things have kind of changed for me. So this one specifically was just, and I'll let Murphy explain this a little bit more, but this for me, and this is what, 93 or 92 proof, 92 proof,
92.
This was so like rich and complex that I was just taken back that a whiskey, like a single grain type of whiskey, could be this complex. And I think once you explain to people the process of this and really what goes into it, the passion behind it, I think there's going to be an awful lot of people who are going to want to get their hands on it. So if you don't mind, can we just talk a little bit about this one and really what goes into the whole process of this one?
Yeah, I'll talk about this one all night. This is actually absolutely my baby. This one is the product that I'm by far most passionate about. So, whereas with the other whiskeys that we've gone over tonight or anything else we produce, you know, a lot of the extensive work is in the mashing and the distillation, and then you throw it in a barrel and it ages, and then you know, after a few years, it's ready to be bottled, and that's kind of it. With the QuintEssential, it's almost the exact opposite. Yes, we still mash it. Yes, we still distill it. But it's post distillation that a lot of the magic starts to happen with this one, and it's a ton of fun for me, a ton of fun for the other people on our team, because it's such an extensive process. So I'll dive into it here, but there is so much going on. It's hard to even cover it all in a few sentences. So we can break it up into a few different sections if we need to. But so the first thing we do after it comes off the still is obviously we cut it down to barrel entry proof, which is 120, and we're gonna barrel everything in our ex bourbon barrels. So the Iowa bourbon that you have on that table there, once we empty that out and bottle it, we set those barrels aside, and we will later fill them up with single malt that is soon to be QuintEssential. So that's the first step, is ex bourbon aging, and that's going to take somewhere between 2 to 3 years. And after that starts to get really fun, we're going to transfer every single barrel from that used bourbon cask over to a unique finishing cask of some sort. And what we're shooting for here is a variety. We want a lot of different types that we can use during this process. Luckily, we're both a winery and distillery, and we've got our own wine casks. We've got our own rums, brandies, you name it. And so we can use a lot of those once they're empty for this step of the process. So we'll move that single malt from the ex bourbon over to, say, ex apple brandy, ex pear brandy, ex grape brandy. We'll move some into rum casks. We'll use a number of different oaks. So we've got French oak, Hungarian oak. And then we also produce some peated malt. That obviously isn't a unique cask finish, but we'll do a couple mashes of actual peated malt. And then in addition to that, what kind of rounds it all out to me is we have a lot of sherry cask influence. So about once a year, we'll bring in some monster barrels from Spain, and we'll transfer whiskey into that too. So it goes from that ex-bourbon barrel to a variety of these different finishing casks, and it's going to age in those for another 2 to 3 years until we taste it and deem that it is ready for the next step. So from there, and this is the best day of the month or every couple months, whatever, for our team, because what we'll do is we'll take this variety of single malt and we'll lay out about 10 to 20 barrels across the floor, and not only me, but our whole production team, some of the people from our front of house, really anyone who wants to, will try through them and kind of just admire them and celebrate them. And then I'll look at what is already in our Solera vat, and then I'll determine which whiskeys would best pair with what is already in that Solera vat. So we'll take those ex-brandy barrels, ex-rum barrels, ex-sherry, and we'll say, hey, these barrels would go best with what is already in that Solera vat. Then we fill it up, we bottle it halfway down, and we repeat it. So we just keep filling it and bottle it halfway down so it never goes empty. And that's a really important part of the process. We want that mother batch to always be present. We want this whiskey to constantly be evolving. While it is a batched whiskey, so we do want there to be some variances, but at the same time, we want there to be some consistency. Then that's why I use the word evolving. We recently bottled batch number 2, and it is slightly different from batch 1, but it's not like a leap from it. I mean, there are a lot of similarities there. So anyway, like I said, it's a mouthful. There's a lot going on with the production process behind this product. But if you want to talk about actually crafting a whiskey, I know the word craft could be kind of hit or miss. Some people frown upon it. But if you want to talk about actually crafting one, this production process allows us to do this. We taste whiskey and we use our own skill set, our own artistic input, and determine which whiskeys would best marry together to create the best product overall.
And that's really interesting, because I know, again, we were talking a little bit before we went live about how many different directions you could go with this. I mean, there's a million different probably types of like releases and all kinds of things. So, that's kind of a really cool thing that you guys can do with this is, by either eliminating or adding something, by changing a bit of the profile of it. And I'm sure you probably want something that has a bit of a consistent, profile or whatever it may be, but, maybe special releases or whatever,
And that's exactly right. So, it needs to have its patented flavor profile and aroma. I mean, we don't want to go from like batch 1 being what you've got in front of you, and then batch 2 is heavily peated, and doesn't have any sherry influence. I mean, we don't want to shock the system. We want some consistency. But we also want people to try batch 1 next to batch 2 and say, oh, wow, I get more raisin and fig on this one. And on batch number 2, I get a lot more of like tropical fruit notes from maybe that, the brandy influence.
Yeah.
So we want people to really study them and compare them, but it also needs to have that it's trademark, patented flavor profile and aroma.
Yeah. Travis is kind of beating me to the punch on a few things. So he wants to be invited, I think, down to one of those days where you start going through all the barrels and doing all that. So Travis, you and everybody else, buddy, we all want to be doing something like that. So
yeah, I mean, we almost need to make like an event out of that, because it really is. It's something that I think any whiskey geek would truly appreciate. Trying so many different single malts, and this is one of my absolute favorite things about single malt, is that they can vary so much in flavor profile. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love bourbon, I love rye, but they're going to be a lot more consistent and have much less variety. With single malt, I mean, you can have single malt finished in a brandy cask versus single malt finished in a sherry cask versus peated single malt.
Mm-hmm. I lost you. Are you there? No. Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. I can't hear you. Yeah. So I guess here's one other thing. So Murphy or Travis also said, yeah. So Travis, this was one of the things, and I'll talk to, and I guess we can all talk about that, but I think this would probably be one of those fun things to do where we kind of all, make a trip down to the distillery or something and have a good time with it. So, but I can hear you're back on. Yep, you're on.
Sorry about that, guys. My headphones died or something. I'm not sure what happened there. My apologies.
Nope, that's okay. No problem. Yeah, Travis was also saying, it says, Murphy, release batch strength single malt. So
yeah, so Travis, you got some good ones going, and you are kind of one step ahead of me here. One thing I've kind of been teasing it. It's nothing official, but long term, I do plan to come out with a QuintEssential that is more of a limited edition release. We can't really do this until we establish the QuintEssential. We need to get our legs under us first.
Yeah.
But long term, I do want to do what is more of a distiller's edition. So we'll have our standard QuintEssential, which you've got in front of you. I've got in front of me. But then also once a year, come out with like a unique batch. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5 barrels, whatever, but just something that is different from the QuintEssential that you're trying now, and something that people would really appreciate, something that a true whiskey connoisseur could actually sit down and kind of study. That's what I like to. I mean, when I drink a nice single malt, like what I'm trying to describe, sitting there maybe with a pen and paper and just kind of being in creative thought. That's how I like to have my single malt. And I would like to tailor a distiller's edition QuintEssential for something like that you can sit down, enjoy, and study.
Would something like this at cask strength be too much or no? Or is that kind of what you're referring to?
I actually, so normally I am a huge advocate of cask strength whiskey, but with this one, I honestly think that 90s to low hundreds is where I'd want to hang.
Okay.
And that's just because there's so much cask influence in it. And I think that when it's at a proof between 92 and 100, you can actually really pick up on those different cask notes. When it's closer to cask strength, I think that some of that isn't presented quite as strongly. And I know that that's weird to hear because with bourbon and rye, it's almost the exact opposite.
Yeah.
But single malt's a very delicate grain. And in order to actually taste all those different casks and all those different oaks and all the different things that we're doing in this production process, we've found that low 90s to low hundreds, that's where it's most presentable.
And I could see that. That was kind of that's why I wanted to ask you, like to get your opinion, because I think maybe that the proof may overshadow some of what it is you're trying to go for, in this release. So.
Exactly. I'm glad that you pick up on that, and that's exactly right. There's the production process here is so extensive. It'd be a real shame to kind of hide some of those elements and some of those notes. And like I said, I love a cask strength whiskey just as much as the next guy, but with this particular whiskey, those notes are just more presentable at a slightly lower proof. And I'm not talking 80 or 82. I mean, just, around the mid 90s, low hundreds.
Yeah. I can see that. I mean, I already like, and like I was saying before, like when I did the review, I was a little bit taken back because a lot of times you're not getting a whiskey. And again, my comparison always in my head is always either bourbon or rye for the most part. And when I'm at like 92, 93, 90 proof, you generally speaking don't get all of that rich complexity, that nice finish that everybody looks for in a barrel proof or cask strength whiskey. But this was just one of those things that just continued to always linger. It was just there. And as it kind of sat on your palate, things were constantly always changing, which was what I really enjoyed about it, was that you'd have it. And then maybe a minute later, you picked up on something else that wasn't there before. So, you've done an absolutely fantastic job with this one. So,
hey, thank you. That really means a lot to me. Like I said at the beginning of this, it's the whiskey that absolutely worked hardest on. It's the one that I'm most passionate about. And, another fun note about that. And I mean, I know that before we got rolling here, we kind of talked about it briefly, but anytime we've got a new batch of this that we're preparing for bottling, the people on my team will tell you that I'll start losing my mind about 3 weeks before we release it, because I'll be, manipulating this Solera vat, adding a barrel of this, adding a barrel of that, trying to get it exactly how I want it to be. I'll go home and I'll complain to my wife, like I cannot get it right. And then eventually I will, or at least I have for the 2 batches we've done so far. I'll get it to be exactly how I want it to taste and smell. So that's very important to me, that we never release a batch of this before it's exactly what we want it to be. Like I keep saying, this is a whiskey that we can manipulate. We can shape it to be however we want it to be. So it would be really silly, to cave and try to meet a deadline or something and release it before it's what we would deem perfect. So that's kind of the whole process. Is we're challenging ourselves to create something in advance, and we're not going to stop until we hit that mark. Well,
and that's important. I mean, and it's refreshing to hear that, come from like your mouth, because, that just signifies the passion and the quality that you want to have in this bottle. Because again, like we were talking before, you could easily say, I don't know if I've got this one. And again, not to say that every single thing is always going to be a home run. We know that that's not a possibility, but with this, you can tell there's just the passion behind it, that I want to get this one right to make sure that when it goes out, it's exactly the way I want it crafted.
Exactly. And I mean, especially considering, it's at a more premium price point. So if someone if someone takes a chance on it and they don't think it's ready, or they don't like it, they're not going to come back to it. They're not going to make that investment again. So we need to be fully confident that it is going to satisfy, it is going to please people who are taking a chance on it, especially because it's a newer product. I mean, when you're first launching a brand, I mean, you have to make sure that things are very good, that people are going to respect them, because otherwise it's going to fizzle out right away and you're never going to develop anything. So especially early on, that's extremely important.
I guess I don't know if we touched on it, but what are the price points on these 3 roughly?
Great question. So the Iowa bourbon is at roughly $35.99, and depending on the market, depending on the deal, I mean, there's a little bit of give or take there. The number 9 is going to be $40 to $45 depending where you're at, and then the QuintEssential is going to be $59.99 in most markets. Yep.
And I'll tell you what, I mean, when you look at what you're getting for $60, that's a hell of a product right there for $60 in today's day and age. Because when I compare everything to bourbon and rye, I mean, that's become a very common price for a lot of whiskeys nowadays. And the Scotch world, I mean, there's not a lot of things that you get that are of great quality that are less than $100, and they go sky high. So
that's exactly right. And especially in recent times, with the tariffs, I mean, Scotch has really, really gotten expensive. And don't get me wrong, a lot of them are very much worth it. I'm a huge single malt fan. I'm a huge Scotch fan. So they can definitely be worth it. But that's kind of a segue into another topic that I'm deeply passionate about, and that's just American single malt whiskey in general, which the QuintEssential is. American single malt, I think there's just this huge opportunity right now, and there's people have been wondering when this is going to boom for a while, but I think with the tariffs that are affecting scotches and how high the price point has got on most of them, and in addition to that, all these newer distilleries throughout the country, there are thousands of them now. A lot of them are producing single malt, so there's like this perfect storm of having a lot of new options in the American single malt category, and scotches being at a higher price point. There's a major opportunity for an American single malt whiskey boom right now. So that's why we kind of released this product when we did. I mean, we had been dabbling in single malts prior to this release, but we wanted to rebrand and come out with something, with a new name and a better package and label on it, just to show people that we're taking this category very seriously, and we want to position ourselves to be at the forefront of it. So there are some really, really good American distilleries competing in this category right now, and we're proud to be one of them.
Yeah. I mean, that was the thing. I mean, it's the bottle, the packaging, everything, everything that's in it is kind of really, really resonated with me anyway. And again, this is coming from somebody who's used to bourbon and rye and all of that, but it's kind of the complete package when you really look at everything. So
yeah. And one last note on the package of it. One thing that studies have shown is that American consumers, thank you there. A lot of American consumers are struggling to figure out what American single malt whiskey is exactly. Scotch is Scotch. People know Scotch, but people don't necessarily know what American single malt whiskey is. Excuse me. And so what we wanted to do was take this product, which is an American whiskey, but dress it up more like you would see on a traditional Scotch. So, I mean, and you can see it right here, right now. The two whiskeys to the left, the Iowa Bourbon and the number 9, those are more American style labels where the brand name is very big, very obvious, and you can read it from a bar all the way across the room. Yep. The QuintEssential has smaller fonts. There's a little bit more information on the label. It's maybe a little bit more elegant, and that is a traditional Scotch style. So we figured to kind of get people to segue from traditional American whiskeys into the world of single malt, we need to dress that product up like single malts that people have seen, and that's primarily going to be Scotches.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've done a fantastic job with really all of it. So, all right. So before we kind of get off, a couple more things, and then I'll throw a few little curveballs at you. I'll throw a couple, just some general questions, and see what you think. So, I guess to kind of transition. So, as far as Cedar Ridge goes, like where are we at? Where do we kind of see things going for the future? What are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, good question. And right now more than ever, it's all very confusing. I mean, this year has been a whirlwind, and it's been impossible to predict. So who knows what's going to happen in the future? Our goals, like I said earlier, are to be as relevant and as possible in the Midwest. We really want to hammer home the Midwest, especially with the Iowa Bourbon. And then, meanwhile, we really want to be building the quintessential single malt in kind of a different way. That's going to go along with the category of single malt. So we're really trying to raise awareness about that category of whiskey in general. So we're more active in that. But then, I mean, as for just the company in general, I mean, it really depends. When it comes to business moves, I mean, we're a very strategic and conservative company. We only spend money, I mean, when it really makes sense to. If it makes perfect sense to expand our operation, we're going to do it, but we're not going to do it a minute too soon. Yeah. So we're a privately owned company, by the way. Jeff and Lori Quint are owners, and we're not owned by some of these big companies that can kind of fill our pockets with bottomless amounts of money. I mean, we have to be very strategic with our resources and determine when we should be utilizing them. So what the future holds, it's kind of unknown. Our number one goal right now, our absolute number one, is to become the top selling bourbon in the state of Iowa. And then we'll see where we go from there.
Awesome. Well, before we get off and I fire a few other kind of just random fun questions, I'm going to do kind of the giveaway thing. We had 7 people that entered. So I'm just going to do a number between 1 and 7. I've got everyone's name here with the number and stuff. Hopefully everybody can kind of see that. So I wrote them down. I put a number on everyone's name. So we'll choose between 1 and 7, and whoever's name gets picked, I'll send you a 2-ounce sample of each one of these. So, all right, here we go. So, hey, Google, choose a number between 1 and 7. Let's try this again. Never works the best.
Gotta love technology.
Hey, Google, choose a number between 1 and 7. That's weird. All All right. We'll do the old randomizer, I guess. 3. So number 3 was who it picked as the randomizer. So number 3, Run Rev, number 3. So, Bud, I'll be sending you a 2-ounce sample. We'll connect. We've already been in touch. So, congratulations on that. So yeah, I think you'll really enjoy these. So, all right. So here's what's something I always like to do. That's just kind of some fun questions, and we'll kind of fire away. So, so let's see. We'll start with the sports theme first. So, favorite sport and favorite team.
That's an easy one. Baseball and the Chicago Cubs, and they just recently broke my heart. So as they do almost every year.
And as a Brewer fan, that's the wrong answer, by the way. So, but I won't judge you. So all right. So here's another one: mustard or ketchup on a hot dog.
People aren't gonna like this, but ketchup.
Oh, jeez. Okay, so far 0 for 2, but that's okay. That's okay. Favorite pizza topping.
I'll stay mainstream on this one, and I'll go pepperoni.
Okay, all right. Now we're getting a little bit better. I
am pro pineapple. I'm going to throw that out there.
Okay, I can get down with that too. So, favorite either music or band.
I mean, I obviously have to go SlipKnot.
Okay.
It would be an absolute slap in the face not to mention them. Other than that, I mean, oh man, I really like it all, and I try not to get locked in on one type or anything like that. So we'll stick with SlipKnot, and I like to mix it up.
You can't go wrong with that one. So SlipKnot's is a good one. So all right. So here's always a funny one that I like to ask. So if anyone got a hold of your current, like, whatever media player or whatever, what would the most embarrassing song be on there, you think?
I am a big fan of the song "Hey, What's Up" by 4 Non Blondes, or what's going on.
Okay, all right. Oh, you're going
that one a lot. Yeah.
Oh, you're going back to you're going back to some boy. That's probably that's early 90s or so. I bet.
I think so. Yeah.
All right. So that would be my high school days right there. So yeah, I can get behind the 4 Non Blondes. So, favorite movie.
I gotta go. I've got 2 that are tied. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. My dog is named Bueller. And then Hook. I'm a huge fan of the movie Hook.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right, and then the final one, I guess. With that being said, in terms of the movie category, favorite actor.
My favorite actor. This one fluctuates a little bit. Right now, I think I'd probably go Brad Pitt.
Yeah. All right, that's it. That's all I've got. So, so first I want to say thank you so much for taking a little bit of your time. We'll talk. I think what I'd like to try to do is maybe get even at some point, whether it's winter or maybe spring or something, get a few guys together, come down, visit the distillery, kind of have a day of it. We could talk about some other things. I'll talk to a couple other guys maybe about doing some picks or something along the way there. So, is there anything you kind of want to wrap things up with?
What I usually wrap up with, and I mean, I think your following is already doing this, but I always like to say, get out there and explore whiskey, and not just Cedar Ridge by any means. I mean, I sure hope you give us a try, but now more than ever, I mean, like every country, every state in the U.S., everyone is putting out cool whiskeys right now. There's never been a better time to explore this world. So, wherever you're at, if you go on a vacation in any state, any country right now, go to a local distillery and see what they've got, because there's such cool stuff out there right now.
Yeah. We'll make a trip of this or a weekend of it, and we'll be in touch. We'll get some good people together and get down there to the distillery and check out and see what you guys what you really have going on. So, all right, guys, I just want to say thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. Greatly appreciated. Anybody watching the replay later on down the road, hopefully you enjoy it. Again, go visit Cedar Ridge. I know we're in kind of some crazy times now. Hopefully, before too much longer, things will get a little bit better. But again, everyone, thanks for joining tonight. And more importantly, Murphy, thanks for taking a little bit of your time. And I greatly appreciate it.
No, hey, thanks so much for having me. This was a ton of fun, and thanks everyone tuning in.
Yep. All right, guys. We'll see you. We'll see you next Tuesday, hopefully. And until then, keep drinking whiskey, and we'll see you guys next Tuesday. Cheers.
See y'all.